Closed captioning is available and is recommended for viewing all module videos. In Module 1, you will explore the historic Kissimmee Okeechobee Everglades watershed, also known as the KOE. This is a large, diverse, and complex watershed that includes 16 counties in Florida, from Orange County in the north to Monroe County in the south. Water is the dominant element in the Everglades, and it shapes the land, vegetation, and animal life in southern Florida. Although the region appears flat, the difference of inches in the KOE watershed has a tremendous impact on the whole region. The historic Kissimmee Okeechobee Everglades watershed began near Orlando in the Kissimmee chain of lakes and flowed south, discharging into Florida Bay. The Kissimmee Basin is the northern portion of the KOE watershed and begins in the Kissimmee chain of lakes, an area composed of more than 24 lakes, with East Lake Tehopekalaga in the north to Lake Kissimmee in the south. These lakes were connected through a network of broad waterways, streams, and sloughs, and the water levels would have varied throughout the seasons. Lake Kissimmee is the headwaters for the Kissimmee River. The meandering Kissimmee River was once a highway of commerce in central Florida during the 1800s and well into the last century. It is said that a steamboat captain, slowly making his way along the shallow snake-like river, could have another steamboat in sight for a whole day and not pass his comrade until nightfall. In its original state, the river was as distinctive as the Everglades. It was unique in North America, resembling tropical rivers such as the Amazon in South America and the Senegal in Niger in Africa. This region of Florida, now often overshadowed by the Everglades, is also naturally and culturally significant. What made it distinctive? The land in this region is so flat and the water is so abundant that the floodplain of this shallow, slow-moving river is exceptionally wide, in some places 3 miles wide. And this vast floodplain was inundated with water almost all year. The enormous wetlands associated with this meandering river supported a diverse and productive habitat for plants and animals, and had national and international significance as a resting and foraging area for migratory birds. It greened the heartland of Florida and fed Lake Okeechobee. Because it remained wet year-round, the Kissimmee River corridor provided a bountiful smorgasbord of small fishes and invertebrates, an important backup food supply for Everglades wildlife, especially birds, during cycles of drought south of Lake Okeechobee. The wetlands also provided a substantial feeding and nursery habitat for large river fish such as bass. The waters from the meandering Kissimmee River flowed into Lake Okeechobee. But the lake also received waters from Lake Istapoga from sheet flow, as well as from several creeks on the north end of the lake. Lake Okeechobee gets its name from the Calusa Indians and means big water. On the western and northern edges of the lake were impenetrable stands of sawgrass. The eastern and northeastern shore were lined with cypress swamp. To the south, there was a massive custard apple swamp that extended across large sections of the southern portion of the lake. Custard apple is also known as pond apple. Periodically, summer rains would cause the lake to fill and overflow, sending a sheet of flowing water over the natural southern shore into the Everglades. While the lake was an important water source for the Everglades, it caused problems for the residents who were beginning to settle near the lake. In September 1928, the storm surge from a Category 5 hurricane caused water to pour out of the southern edge of the lake, breaking the 5-foot levee. Houses and buildings in the community south of the lake were swept away, and at least 2,500 people drowned in the floodwaters, which reached 20 feet deep. After leaving Okeechobee, this river did not rush down a deep corridor or meander through a crooked channel like the historic Kissimmee. Instead, it spread out slowly over more than 8 million acres, covering miles and miles, and was guided southward by the slightly higher terrain from Big Cypress Swamp to the west and the Atlantic Coastal Ridge to the east. Just below the Custard Apple Swamp south of the lake, the waters would flow through Sawgrass Plains, an area that extended approximately 15 miles south and southeast. South of the Sawgrass Plains was a varied landscape that covered a large portion of the Everglades. Here, elongated sloughs filled with plants such as water lilies alternated with sawgrass ridges. This ridge and slough topography was dotted with elongated tree islands, and all of these features aligned with the southern flow of water through the Everglades on its journey south. The average depth in these sloughs during the wet season ranged between 1 to 2 feet. The rate of flow through the Everglades was incredibly slow, flowing about 2 feet per minute, or a quarter of a mile per day. Native Americans living in and around the river called it Paheyoki, the grassy waters. The Everglades was then considered a liquid wasteland. Early settlers viewed its value only for development and dreamed of draining it. As recently as 1870, only a few hundred people lived along the coast of southeastern Florida, and the impact of their presence was so minimal it was almost non-existent. However, at the same time, an estimated 2 million wading birds inhabited the Everglades. The native birds of the Everglades have attracted attention for over 100 years. James Audubon came to paint them, and others came to collect their plumage for fashionable hats of the day and almost decimated them. The slow flow of water through the Everglades played an important role, providing rich habitat for wading birds to thrive, even throughout the dry season. While some of the water flowing through the Everglades would flow east and west, the majority of the historic flow emptied into the Florida Bay. Florida Bay is an estuary covering approximately 1,100 square miles and encompasses roughly 1/3 of Everglades National Park. The bay is composed of interconnected basins, grassy mudbanks, and mangrove islands that are used for nesting by a variety of bird species, and as a nursery and feeding grounds for a host of marine animals, including the American crocodile, the West Indian manatee, the loggerhead turtle, bottlenose dolphin, and a variety of game fish. This concludes the Exploring the Historic Kissimmee Okeechobee Everglades Watershed video. Next, you should complete the module by downloading and reading a chapter from The River of Grass by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Then you will reflect on what you have learned from the module by answering the 2 reflection questions listed at the bottom of the Module 1 guiding questions. You will be asked to submit your answers at the end of the Module 1 quiz. Finally, you will wrap up this module by completing the Module 1 quiz. We hope that you've enjoyed this presentation, and we encourage you to continue building on your background knowledge of the Everglades even further by completing any of the additional modules available.